This is my final log entry as Sector Mapper 3rd Class I Reth Vo of the Oran Cartographers Guild, filed under personal seal rather than guild record, because I will not be filing a guild record. I have already redrawn the charts. The sector formerly designated Reach 9 no longer appears in the working atlas. As of this morning, it carries only a blank field and the standard marginal notation we use for regions of navigational hazard. No designation, no coordinates, no approach vectors. What I am recording here is not a report. It is an explanation, for whoever opens this file after I close it, of why a certified cartographer with 11 years of clean service is choosing silence over procedure, and why I believe that silence is the correct professional judgment. I will try to be precise. Precision is the only discipline I have left. Reach 9 became a problem 7 months ago, when the Guild lost contact with survey pair Olanva 12 and Olanva 13. Two mid-range charting vessels, standard crew of 9 each, assigned to complete the outer edge survey of what the preliminary charts labeled a low-density stellar region along the human border. No distress signal.
No final transmission.
The vessels simply stopped reporting at the end of a standard duty cycle, the way a voice stops mid-sentence. The Guild logged it as a navigational incident, pending investigation, and assigned me to follow their route and determine the cause. That is standard procedure. I have done it before. You retrace the survey path, you locate the problem, instrument failure, spatial anomaly, a mapped hazard the pair failed to flag, and you file the report. I have filed 11 such reports in my career. None of them prepared me for Reach 9. I crossed into the region 17 days into my assignment, following the logged coordinates of the last beacon Olanva 12 activated before going silent. The instruments registered nothing unusual.
No spatial distortion. No radiation bloom. No gravitational variance.
The star field was quiet. There were no signals of any kind on any frequency. Not human, not Delvan, not residual drift from a vessel in distress. Just a very clean, very empty silence that my instruments kept confirming was a silence and not a technical failure on my end. I logged the silence and continued inward. The first thing I found was a beacon. Not one of ours. Olanva 12's outer edge markers had a distinct Guild emission signature, and this was not it. It was a human navigation marker, small, standardized, the kind their survey services use to demarcate a boundary or a point of interest. It was active and broadcasting on a frequency I am not cleared to decode. I noted its coordinates and continued. I found 3 more of those markers in the following 6 hours, spaced at regular intervals along what I realized, plotting them against my charts, was a precise geometric arrangement. Not random placement. A calculated grid. Someone had surveyed this region thoroughly enough to establish a marker grid. Someone had been here, had spent considerable time and resources here, and had left a structured set of coordinates behind. The markers were not placed to warn ships away. They were placed the way a careful researcher places boundary stakes around a study site. I logged this and continued, because I was still looking for Olanva 12 and Olanva 13. I found them at the center of the marker grid. Both vessels were intact. I want to be precise about that. Not damaged, not debris, not the scattered hull fragments of a collision or a weapon strike. Intact. Running lights active. Life support systems cycling on their maintenance protocols. The vessels were drifting in a slow parallel formation, separated by approximately 400 meters, oriented in the same direction, toward the inner region, deeper into human space, as though they had been placed. The way you place a specimen in a tray. The way you arrange objects you intend to study. I hailed both vessels. No response. I approached Olanva 12 and requested a manual dock. The airlock cycled normally. The vessel let me in. I will not describe the interior in full. What I will say is that the vessel was empty of crew in the same way a sealed archive is empty of visitors. Not abandoned, not ransacked, not the scene of any struggle. Everything was in order. The logs were running. The instruments were active and recording. 18 crew berths, all undisturbed. The galley had a meal that had not been completed, the plates still in position, the utensils set down as though the crew had simply paused mid-motion and then were not there. The navigation console showed the last log coordinates and a new set of coordinates I did not recognize, entered from an external source at a timestamp that fell inside the communication gap, after the vessel had gone silent to the Guild, before I arrived. Someone had boarded Olanva 12, recorded its position, and then left it exactly as they found it, minus the crew. I checked Olanva 13 by remote sensor only. The same configuration. Both vessels intact, both logs running, both crews absent, no sign of violence, no sign of distress, no sign of resistance. Just the gap where 18 people had been, on each vessel, and then were not. I will tell you what I understood in that moment, because I have been trained to read cartographic evidence, and this was cartographic evidence. The human marker grid was not a warning boundary. It was a collection perimeter. They had mapped the region in detail. They had allowed vessels to enter. They had taken the crews with the same methodical care that a researcher takes samples, intact, organized, catalogued. They had left the vessels behind because the vessels were not the point. The vessels were just the containers. The contents were what mattered. 18 crew on Olenvat 12, 18 on Olenva 13, 36 individuals collected inside a precisely mapped perimeter, with no violence and no apparent effort. The marker grid remained active, broadcasting on frequencies I could not decode, presumably still recording. I did not go deeper into the region. I want to be clear about that decision. I made it as a professional judgment, not out of fear, though fear was present. I made it because I understood, reviewing the marker placement and the vessel condition and the coordinate entries, that what had happened to Olenvat 12 and Olenva 13 had not been an accident or a territorial response. It had been a procedure. Humans have a procedure for vessels that enter this region. The procedure is thorough, calm, and leaves the physical evidence in order. This is not the behavior of a species that is alarmed by incursion. It is the behavior of a species that anticipated incursion, prepared for it, and finds it useful. I returned to my vessel and began the process of filing the standard recovery report. I got as far as the summary header before I stopped. The Guild Standard Recovery Report would include the coordinates of Olenva 12 and Olenva 13. It would include the marker grid coordinates. It would note the vessel's condition and the nature of their logs. It would initiate a retrieval protocol, Guild vessels dispatched to collect the survey ships, assess the region, determine next steps. Those Guild vessels would carry crews. They would enter the marker grid. They would be catalogued. The humans would find the report a useful notification that more vessels were incoming. I deleted the summary header. I sat in the chart room for what I believe was approximately 4 hours, though I did not log the time. I reviewed, once more, the 11 recovery reports I have filed in my career. I reviewed the Guild's standard procedures for regions of confirmed navigational hazard. I reviewed the archive index for any prior Guild records on Reach 9, which turned up 2 entries. One preliminary survey from 40 years ago, which ended with the surveyor's notation that the region was structurally unremarkable, further survey deferred, and one administrative flag from 60 years before that, origin unrecorded, which simply marked the coordinates as pending classification, do not approach. The flag carried no Guild seal. I do not know who filed it. I know now why they did not explain. Then I began the work of erasing the sector from the working atlas. It is painstaking work, done correctly. Reach 9 shared boundary coordinates with 6 adjacent sectors, and each boundary reference had to be adjusted so that the atlas remained internally coherent. No gap visible to a reader, no anomalous blank that would invite a cartographer to investigate. What I needed was not an erasure that looked like an erasure. I needed a redrawing that made Reach 9 appear to have never been a designated region in the first place. Adjacent sectors extended naturally to fill the space. The outer edge survey assignments I deleted from the project queue. Olenva 12 and Olenva 13's final mission log I reclassified under a notation I have the Guild authority to apply. Lost in transit, cause undetermined, case closed. The crews will be listed as deceased. The vessels will be listed as unrecoverable. This is not false. These are the accurate categories given what I know. The marker grid coordinates I have stored in a private file under my personal encryption, not Guild record. Not because I intend to use them. Because I want them to exist somewhere, sealed, so that if anyone ever opens this log and disbelieves it, they can verify. The coordinates are real. The grid is still active. I assume it will remain active until humans decide it should not be. I do not know when that will be. I do not believe that decision depends on anything we do. I want to note, for the record that is not a record, one thing I observed in Olenva 12's running log before I left the vessel. The log had been recording throughout the period the crew was absent. Environmental sensors, instrument readings, standard automated functions. At one point, the external sensor array registered a brief proximity contact. A vessel, not our design, that approached to within 200 meters, remained stationary for 11 minutes, and then departed. That was the only logged activity in the gap period. 11 minutes. Whatever assessment they needed, they completed it in 11 minutes. I have been mapping this quadrant of the galaxy for 11 years. I know how long it takes to survey a vessel thoroughly. 11 minutes is not a thorough survey. 11 minutes is a glance. The kind you give something you have already catalogued and are simply confirming has not changed. Olenvat 12 had not been surveyed. It had been checked. I do not know how many vessels from how many species are in that collection. I do not know the purpose. I do not know if the purpose is scientific or administrative or something I do not have a category for. I know that the grid is still active and the marker stakes are still broadcasting, and the sector I have just erased from the atlas is not empty. It has never been empty. It is full of things that were sent into it and did not come back, and has been organized and maintained and monitored with a consistency that implies decades, possibly centuries, of sustained attention. This is the last entry I will file on the subject. I am closing the project queue, sealing this file under my personal encryption, and submitting my resignation from the Olenvar Sector Survey Team. I will tell Guild administration that my reasons are personal. They will accept this. I have a clean record and no prior requests of this kind. If someone opens this file in the future, a colleague, an administrator, a successor who finds the anomaly in the Atlas border coordinates and traces it here, I want to leave them with what I believe to be the accurate professional assessment, the one I reached in the chart room over 4 hours of reviewing the evidence. The reason no one comes back from human space is not that humans destroy what enters. It is that they keep it. They keep it intact and organized and monitored. They keep the logs running. They leave the lights on. Somewhere in Reach 9, in a collection I will not speculate about, 18 members of the Oran Guild are catalogued under coordinates I have encrypted and will carry alone. I am closing this file now. The sector has been erased. The border has been redrawn. The atlas is clean. There is nothing in Reach 9 to find.